I'll show you something very curious that is happening in front-end world. Title of my talk is Thinking Qwik. So before that, I have a question. How do methods break up? They stop calling each other. So that's how they break up. So that's a dev joke. Yeah, who am I? So I am Kirankumar Ambati, working as a front-end engineer at Atlassian. Today morning, I was running a performance insights. So this is a tool by Builder.io. So I was running React Nexus website just to see the score. And that came around 80. So that is the score. And if you see TTI, the time to interactive, it's 4 seconds, which is pretty huge. So the reason being, this is very small website, and that has score of 80 and TTI of 4 seconds. Assume a website which is kind of e-commerce or something which would end up in very bad score, and also the huge TTI. And if you want to know the impact of TTI on revenues, talk to Varsha. She's the right person. She'll explain how much impact TTI has on revenues. And if you see the right column, there's a thing called as optimized JavaScript. There, if you optimize JavaScript, the score just jumped to 97, and TTI improved almost double. From 4 seconds, it came to 2 seconds. So here, optimizing JS is just deleting JS, actually. So I'll show you how we can delete that. And one more thing, recently, the websites became more feature-rich. But the more features you add to your website, the more JS you are going to ship. But the problem with that is, the more JS you are going to ship, the more time you are going to take for the website to become interactive. So the TTI is going to increase. So we are landing up in a paradox, wherein we need more features, but we need that in less time. So how do we solve that? This talk is not about Qwik.js. This is about a mental model that Qwik.js is trying to imbibe into our minds, and which I feel is really good. So this is going to be start of a different kind of frameworks which we are going to see. Yeah, so I'll just show you how rendering works. So this is pre-frameworks era. HTML, you see a blank page, then JS gets downloaded, executed, that page gets rendered, and you see the page loaded, and that's clickable. So this is how it used to be. With the frameworks, so HTML got bigger because server-side rendering and stuff, so you got more stuff in HTML, so it got bigger. You see page instantly, which is a good point, so loading is faster. But the problem with hydration is, you're going to download same amount of JS, you're going to execute same amount of JS, you are going to go through hydration, then you're going to see the page again, which is interactable. So the problem being, if you actually observe the time cycle, it actually got slower. The TTI actually got slower. The problem we saw is because of the JS that is being repetitively downloaded and executed. Then comes resumability. We have HTML, which has some server-side rendered code. Then you have some special script. I'll show you that. What is that? 1 KB of Qwik.js framework chunk that gets downloaded. Your page gets loaded, but the beauty is it's already interactive. So you have no JS except that 1 KB of JS. There is no JS downloaded, but the page is already interactive. And I'll show you how beautiful this is when I show the demo. But just remember that, so that is progressive. The JS that gets downloaded afterwards, it's going to be very progressive. As you interact with the UI, it downloads more. So this is an interesting graph. If you observe, classical frameworks follows a linear correlation with the content on the page. The more content you keep adding on the page, the more the bundle size gets. But with Qwik.js or any other resumable frameworks, what you see is it follows a constant space. So as in, Qwik.js is also claims to be O of 1 framework. What does it mean is, the amount of JS that gets downloaded on load of page is always constant. That is just the 1 KB which we saw earlier. So how Qwik does this? This sounds too dreamish, right? So how come a website work without JS getting downloaded? So there are two principles that Qwik follows. One is resumability, the other one is progressiveness of the framework. I am going to talk about both of them. Resumable. So hydration does three things usually. One is just taking the listeners and trying to flush it into the DOM tree. And secondly, it's constructing the component tree in the DOM. And thirdly, application state restoration. So it gets state from the server, it tries to put that into the client and just show it for us. How Qwik does is completely different. It doesn't feed from the server. It directly serializes everything and puts that into HTML. So the moment you have HTML, that is the moment you have everything ready. So that is the reason Qwik doesn't require any other external JS or more JS bundles to, or the hydration process is completely gone. So how it does, if you see that Qwik JSON, so this is a snapshot which I took from one of the app which we are going to see later. If you see that Qwik JSON, that is the application state that comes with the HTML on render. Qwik loader, that is the chunk of JS library, the core library, that makes the page interactive. So it's very small part of that library, it's just 1 KB file. And the third one is how Qwik handles the events. So basically, it's very fascinating to know that Qwik handles events in a different way than other frameworks do in today's life. Everything in Qwik is a global event. So usually, it doesn't handle events at each element. What it does is it handles global. I'll show you how. And the other characteristic is progressiveness. This is interesting. The other frameworks which you have today, the classical frameworks, on load of page, the whatever JS we required, so it's downloaded on the go, then that gets used by the page. But in terms of frameworks like Qwik, which are progressive in nature, only very small chunk of JS gets downloaded, and as you interact with the page, more JS gets downloaded. And this is what makes it instantaneous. So it's very fast. How it does, so there is something called as dynamic code splitting. If you see that dollar, right, that is called as optimizer. When you write a code in Qwik, you are going to use the dollars often, and whenever Qwik compiler sees the code, whenever it sees the dollar, it knows, okay, next part of code I'm going to see can be moved to a different chunk. So that is how it's going to be. And the beauty is, even for the event handlers, you can add dollar. So even the event handler's code is going to be moved to a different chunk. And you might think this can be done in current frameworks, maybe, but no. The problem being, I'll show you later, that there is, in any event handler, if you are using any variables, there is a property called closure. And you cannot dynamically import a event handler function because you cannot infuse closure into something dynamically imported. So, but there is something beautifully done by Qwik which can handle that part. I'll show you. So with that optimizer in place, what happens is we have a big bundle, but eventually you're going to end up with small chunks, and whatever chunks are required, only that going to get downloaded. So we'll see that in demo, so that will make it more sense. So I have built a very small application, increment, decrement, say hello, very small one, in Next.js and in Qwik.js. We'll see the difference. So I refresh the page. I hope it's visible, yeah. If you see, there is 1.4 MB of data got transferred over the network, which is fine. And if I interact, so it's working fine, increment working fine, decrement working fine, hover, it's hover fine, hello React Nexus. So what happened is, on load of page, we got 1.4 MB of data got downloaded, or the bundle got downloaded, and there is no further JS got downloaded, which is totally fine. Now let's see how Qwik.js handles this. So I'm clearing the network, please pay attention. Nothing. So in network tab, you see nothing, because no JS is required for the initial load of the page. The way Qwik handles this is, as I was showing earlier, Qwik JSON, which has the data. For example, counter is 0, name is React Nexus. So those are the two variables which I am using. And if you see the loader part, so this is the actual framework. So if you keenly observe, so it's create event, dispatch, emit event, and so most of around events. So what is happening here is with that 1 KB of framework which got downloaded, events are handled. So that part is done. So we have state, we have events, so listeners are going to work fine. And as I shown earlier, so we have Qwik events, which is an array of events, and all are going to be global events. So that part is done. How? Okay, let me do one thing. So for now, we have not interacted with the page. Let me try interacting with this. There's nothing in the network tab. Just pay attention. I clicked increment, and we saw a couple of them got downloaded. We'll see what are those. One is core library. That is the actual Qwik library that got downloaded, the remaining chunk. And yeah, the interesting part starts here. So if you see this code, it's just increment part. So if I open my coder, and if you are able to see, so in Qwik.js, so this is the part represent that button. So I just have a handler which is doing counter plus plus. It's very basic stuff. That got separated into a different chunk itself. And if you see how Qwik handles this, if I can move it here, button on click, instead of seeing a function which we usually see, you see a file name. Source root, some file name. So if you see at the end, MQ00, hash. So there's hash, again you have an ID here. So what is happening here is, so behind the scenes, what Qwik does is, there is something called as Qwik resolver, which looks for, so on click of that button, it says, okay, I have this attribute value, I'll take that. Then it has something called as QRL resolver. QRL is nothing but Qwik's URL. So basically it takes that file path, then it creates actual URL, and it queries for the server asking, okay, I need this file, is it in my cache? No. Then it is going to download that for us. So that is how this got downloaded. And I'll show you decrement part. So for now, we saw increment. For decrement, so we are not going to see core.js again because it's already there. So we downloaded once, it's done. So if you see this chunk, counter minus mass, it's that simple. And I was saying something, right? So this part, if you try to move this part to a separate util in the current framework, it doesn't work because I'm using counter and counter is somewhere else. So it is closed over this function. So if I try to dynamically import my util, it doesn't work because you cannot close over. You just have to call manually. So how Qwik does that is, they have a module, this core.js, the core library that has something called as use lexical scope, which takes this, that has the store, and that is how it's manipulating this. So it's pretty same with any other event. So that is a basic principle. So if I hover over here, you see the same thing got downloaded, and it's just the same thing, that part. So what is happening is, every chunk got separated into its own JS file, and that gets sent to the UI whenever it's requested. Yeah, so we have seen this, and this is the file, how it looks. So it just having the lexical scope, take the state whatever you want, just do the functionality. And one interesting thing, just that demo which I showed you, so I was testing the Lighthouse metrics. It's very minor one. And you see the performance already got hindered in Next.js. So just assume it's just a very minor application when we saw 91. What happens with the a bigger websites? So that is why the idea of having Qwik or how it's showing up is really interesting. Thank you.